ahead and get started. So you're riding in an elevator and decide to find how far it travels in 10 minutes. You start on the third floor and record each trip in the table. How far did the elevator travel in hours? So George, you did a nice job on your paper. Can you explain how you did each part?
Well, this unit is absolute value, so you just add all the floors up and you get 33.
Okay, so you were literally adding them as absolute values, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you got, what, 33? Mm-hmm. So you have traveled 33 floors. If we started on the third floor, though, and we did our ups and our downs, what floor did we end on? 18. Okay, and then let's go back to each floor is 12 feet. And then, George, what'd you get for how many feet total?
396.
396 feet. Okay, nice. Nice work. All right, so why study absolute value? Currency, exchange rates, distance, medicine, finance, sports. Think about if you're driving in a car, do you know when you back up your car, like say you really did back up a mile, your odometer is going to tick a mile. Okay, so, but I went backwards. If you end up studying physics, you're going to learn about something called velocity. And velocity is how fast you're going and your direction. So if I go back a mile, that is going in the backwards direction. But of course, I've literally traveled a distance of 1 mile. All right, so the absolute value of a real number x, written absolute value of x, is its distance from 0 on the number line. So for the absolute value of 4 is 4. The absolute value of negative 3 is 3. The absolute value, now what about absolute value of x equals 5? What are the values that x can have? Yeah, plus or minus 5. It isn't just 5, it could be negative 5. So now here's a key piece of information. And I want you to write this down. To solve an absolute value equation, you must get absolute value alone. This is super, super. You have to get the absolute value alone. Write this down in your notes, okay? If you get it by itself, then what's in there is positive or negative. Just like absolute value of x equals 5, x is 5 or negative 5. But it's not true, and let's write, maybe if you have some space up here. There is nothing that says that x plus 1 is 5 and x plus 1 is negative 5. That's not what we're saying. What I'm saying is that you have to get the absolute value alone, then x is plus or minus 4. But if you did this, if you said x plus 1 is 5, or x plus 1 is negative 5, look what happens. I didn't get the right answer. Okay, I want you to pause and I really need you to think about this. The most common thing I see students do with advanced absolute value equations is they try to just say, oh, the left side is 5 and the left side is negative 5. That isn't what we're saying. We're saying the absolute value, when it's by itself, is the positive and the negative. All right, so I'm going to do A first, and then I want you to try B. Once you have the absolute value alone, you can set it equal to the positive or the opposite of the number on the right. So I add 1 and divide by 2. Over here, I add 1, divide by 2. What I strongly recommend you do is check your work. If I plug in 3, 6 minus 1 is 5, absolute value of 5 is 5. It works. If I plug in negative 2, that's negative 4 minus 1 is negative 5, absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and then I circle it, okay? All right, you guys try B. Try it on your own. I'll give you a head start. All right, on part B, did you get 2/3 and -2?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So you get 3x plus 2 equals 4, or 3x plus 2 equals -4. So I get 3x equals 2, divide by 3, x is 2/3. Subtract 2, x is -2. All right, when you're ready, let's flip the page. I put this note here. I said, note, you must first isolate the absolute value before you write two equations. So in problem 2, let me show you what you have to do. I still have the absolute value symbols, but I'm going to start by adding 1 to both sides of the equation. And then you're going to divide by 3. And I want you to notice the two lines that I have both have absolute value symbols. Okay, they both have absolute value symbols. Now I can write the two equations. So x is 1 or x is -5. Now let's do what I suggested. I said let's check these. 1 plus 2 is 3. Absolute value of 3 is 3. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. That checks. What if I put -5 in? -5 plus 2 is -3. Absolute value of -3 is +3. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. All right, an extraneous solution is a solution derived from an original equation that is not a solution of the original equation. You must check for an extraneous solution when there is a variable. So I want you to circle this. When there's a variable on the opposite side of the absolute value, that's when we get extraneous solutions. So I'm going to do problem A with you, show you how to do it, and then I want you to try B. It says solve. Absolute value 3x plus 2 equals 4x plus 5. So what you're going to do is you set it equal or, do you remember how we said like 3 or -3? We were taking the opposite. Okay, we were taking the opposite sign. So if I subtract 3x, I get 2 equals x plus 5. Subtracting 5, I get x is -3. Over here, I get 3x plus 2 equals -4x minus 5. And what's really neat, even though this is the second week of school, we've already said a lot. You remember what I told you last week? When you're solving an equation, I picked the smaller coefficient to move. So out of 3x and -4x, which one should I move? The -4x. So I'm going to add 4x to both sides of the equation. You don't have to do that, but it does make you have less negative signs. I subtract 2, I get 7x equals -7, so x is -1. All right, now, I need a gigantic star here, okay? I really, really, really need you to be checking, because watch what's going to happen. When I go to check this one, when I take 3 times -3 plus 2, that absolute value, I want to know, does it equal 4 times -3 plus 5? Well, -9 plus 2 is -7. Absolute value is 7. but I get negative 12 plus 5 is negative 7. That's not true. This one is an extraneous solution. It doesn't work, and you have to cross it out. I need you guys to really be thinking about this. You've got to check when there's a variable. And if it's too hard, when there's a variable on the opposite side of the absolute value, if you can't remember when to check, just check all the time, okay? Because that just helps. So then over here, if I try negative 1, I get the absolute value of 3 times negative 1 plus 2. Does it equal 4 times negative 1 plus 5? There it is. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Absolute value of negative 1 is 1. Negative 4 plus 5 is 1. Hey, this one checks. Yeah.
Is like the opposite side not variable with the 4x part? Or is it with
The 4x plus 5 is you have to check for extraneous solutions if there's a variable on the side without the absolute value. Okay? Now, one of 3 situations can happen. Sometimes both of them work, and you have 2 answers. So a second case is like this one. One of them doesn't work, and one of them does work. The third case is, what if neither one of them works? Then it's no solution. It is no solution. All right, you guys try B on your own. Let's see how you do. And remember to check for extraneous solutions. I'm going to go ahead and start this one. So your first step is you set it equal to 7x plus 14, or you make it the opposite of 7x plus 14. Now make sure when you do the opposite, you take the opposite of the 7x and the 14. Alright, so here we go. If I subtract 5x from both sides of the equation, I get negative 2 equals 2x plus 14. Subtracting 14, I get 2x equals negative 8. And x is negative 6. I'm going to go ahead and check it right now. 5 times negative 6 minus 2. And if you notice, I put this little question mark. Why would I put a question mark there? Why do I put a question mark above my equals?
You don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. So I put a question mark. I don't know. So let's figure it out. Negative 30 minus 2 is negative 32. Absolute value is positive. This is negative 42 plus 14. All right, somebody help me with that. Is that negative 28? So that's definitely no, yeah.
Wait, how'd you get negative 8?
Yeah, because you're
Oh,
subtracting
sorry.
14 from 2. So that should be
Negative 16. Okay, yeah, I'm like, wait a minute, something's not happening here.
Yeah, I was gonna
So, okay, thank
so
you.
that should be negative 8.
Negative 8. Thank you. All right. You're not crazy. It's me. That is me. Let me just fix it real quick. Yeah, that's negative 8. Let's see. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so I got negative 16 equals 2x. Dividing by 2, x was negative 8. It still didn't work, but that's okay. So 5 times negative 8 minus 2. And then 7 times negative 8 plus 14. So that's positive 42. And then that's negative 42, right?
Yeah.
So it still didn't work, so that one didn't work. Over here, I get 5x minus 2 equals negative 7x minus 14. Adding 7x, I get 12x minus 2 equals negative 14. Adding 2 to both sides of the equation, I get 12x equals negative 12. So x is negative 1. If you,
No, nothing. I see what I did wrong.
okay. So now, and let me make sure I've been clear, you check, the check is in the original. Okay, the check goes in the original, not either of these two spots, okay? The check is in the original. So when I do that, if you can handle it in your head, see, to me, that's 5 times negative 1. That's negative 7, absolute value is 7. And then that's positive 7. Hey, that one worked. You do as much as you need. So what I like to emphasize is each person might be writing a very different amount of work. But if you think you're going to check in your head and you think, oh, she's not going to know, guess what? I will know if one of them didn't work and you never checked, okay? All right, food for thought. Will you always write 2 equations when you have an absolute value equation? Why or why not? Give a counter example if it's not always 2 equations.
Wait, this is still about this one?
Yeah, sure.
I get negative 42 for the check, for the first equation, like for both of them.
Wait a minute. You have an absolute value. Absolute value negative 42 is positive. But you're absolutely right, Hannah. The inside is negative 42, but oops, when I do that absolute value, it changes it. Good question, good question. And you guys, please, 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 ask questions. This is where I need you to, this is the learning, this is where we make mistakes and we figure out what they are. Okay, good question. Oops, okay, so on your papers, do you have the food for thought?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, will you always write 2 equations when you have an absolute value equation? So far, we did. Can you think of any time that you wouldn't? can. What about this?
If you have 0,
Oh, beautiful. Okay, what if I have absolute value? Write this down, okay? Write this down so you know what to do when you see it in the homework. And you guys, in a few minutes, I'm going to give you the homework, and then you'll have about 15 minutes to get started. In the plus period, we're going to do the coloring, and when you're done, you go back to the homework, okay? And you might end up getting it done between the 2 periods. So I want you to, before you ask me for help, I need you to look through the notes and look at what we wrote down, and we wrote ourselves some things off to the side. Reread those paragraphs before you say I can't do it and you need my help. I want you to really work on that this year. So if I have an absolute value equals 0, you're only going to write one equation. I can think of one other case where I don't write 2. And anybody else, now that he said equal to 0, what's another one? How about this? What if I have absolute value equals a negative number? Can you think of any number for x that would spit out of the absolute value a negative 2? No. That means I don't even write anything except no solution. Okay?